General in just a moment after these messages.
Won the lottery choice thing. Governor, there's a lot of rumors around about the new lottery being fixed. There are some ways of finding out the numbers. You bought a couple of tickets. Did you win?
I have not won yet. I'd like to win the groceries, as a matter of fact, if I can only find a W. But
everyone's writing about how wonderful this thing is. Is it as good as it sounds, or do you know something that we don't know about it?
It is a very good, well-conducted, well-administered program. We went around the country and found the best person we could, Mr. Quinn, who's running the lottery, without any political influence or interference. I have nothing to do with it. I only take credit, if I may, for finding Mr. Quinn to run the whole operation. And as far as it being straight and on the level, in the one case where we found a dealer to be tampering with it, prompt action was taken to identify this dealer, and the tampering put the public on notice to be careful to make sure there's no kind of a defacing of the ticket when they buy it. And the curious thing is developed. The persons who are vending for the lottery like it so much because they're making a minor 6% for handling, that they're policing the other dealers to make sure no one kills the little income they're receiving for their participation as vendors.
Do we have your personal guarantee that this thing is clean?
It's on the level, and you can bet on it. And we broke the record with the largest turnover of any state in the Union, and that record had been set by Mr. Quinn in Michigan before. So we're one up on Michigan, and we'll be up one more on Michigan when we defeat the candidate from Michigan who's running for president.
Talking about candidates, can I leap quickly to Daniel Patrick Moynihan, very close and dear friend of yours? You agree with Representative Bella Abzug, who complained about Mr. Moynihan's service with the Nixon and Ford administrations?
Well, I'm more identified and more familiar with his service to the country under President Kennedy and President Johnson, indeed under Governor Harriman in New York State. And there he was responsible for some of the good manpower programs that put people to work. He was responsible also for some of the good youth training programs that put young people into jobs. We need that. We need someone who can think that way in the Senate. And as far as his identity with the Nixon administration, yes, he did try to put through the welfare reform program. And we got that through the House. I was one of the managers for the program in the House, and it failed in the Senate for lack of votes. Now, it's logical to take the man who was pushing for welfare reform, which we want dearly in the state. We want the welfare cost taken off the backs of New York State taxpayers, particularly in the counties who are finding it very difficult to handle their budgets. And we can use Senator Moynihan to get the welfare program through, and Senator Buckley's been unable to do anything about that.
Why is he then so unpopular with the blacks and Hispanics?
He's going to have to do his job, and I'll help him do it, of getting to the minorities and indeed all of those who did not vote for him and explaining that what he was trying to do was help people under any president get the kind of programs that we need in New York. And we need the federalization of welfare, I emphasize that, and we need jobs. And I'd like to see one thing that Senator Buckley has done to improve employment opportunities in New York State. In fact, it's been adverse, because the kind of thinking that he represents is very bad for New York, because we do not get our fair share of federal funds, and he's against federal funding of anything. You know, I'll cite an instance, that we actually got some money for cleaning up New York Harbor, removed debris. It was put in the Public Works bill by Bella Abzug. It got over to the Senate, and he got into a tiff with the chairman of the Senate committee because he said that this bill was full of pork. So the chairman, Jennings Randolph, took that particular project out of the bill to show him it was not pork. Then he had to come to me to get it back in the bill again. Now, we don't need somebody down there who wrecks the good work of the House in the Senate. We need a builder in the Senate. That's why I want Moynihan.
Governor, when Don Bowles, the investigative reporter of the Arizona Republic, was blown away by a killer's bomb, among his last words were, "The Mafia Emprise Corporation, they got me." Now, that's a tie, Mafia and Emprise, that's been made before. It was made in a federal conviction in 1972, upheld by the Supreme Court. And yet, Emprise Corporation has been appointed concessionaire at the newest raceway in the state, Tioga Raceway. The state's staff man from the Raceway and Wagering Commission recommended that Emprise be barred from that position. The commission chairman, Bertram Sarafan, summarily overruled him and let Emprise in. Now, there is some pressure on the new chairman of that commission, Bill Barry, to reopen that case, and I'm interested in your recommendation.
My recommendation to Mr. Barry was this. You take hold at state racing and wagering. You be in charge. Mr. Barry has a background in the Federal Bureau of Investigation. He's held high positions administratively for security in major corporations. He knows how to conduct investigation and administration. He has a free hand. I want him to go all the way and straighten out the situation in racing and wagering, because I want all the revenue we can get for the state, not for racketeers, not for anybody involved in any kind of subversive activities around the tracks. And I want, indeed, to respond, and I want him to respond to the allegations that were made by the bipartisan State Investigating Commission that the State Racing and Wagering Board was not doing its job. Mr. Berry will do his job, and if there's any hint of anyone of improper influence around the tracks, then they will be, he'll get rid of them in New York.
And in this specific case, would you like to see a rehearing?
In this case, with these allegations before him, I would judge that certainly a rehearing would be in order.
Okay. Governor Carey, last week you signed an executive order creating an affirmative action committee to increase minority employment in state agencies. However, reports of that order did not indicate whether the plan was also aimed at increasing minority employment in the construction trades. I know that is a move that Black and Puerto Rican Legislative Caucus has been anxious to see you get involved in. What are you doing in that regard?
Less than half a minute.
We're doing all we can to get jobs for everyone in the state, and we need building to get going.
Is there a state plan?
The state plan would be, frankly, to comply with the federal order involved here, the one handed down by the judge, and we're trying to work really, and there have been efforts made, I want to say this on behalf of the unions, to involve minorities in the rehabilitation programs which are going on. That's the biggest form of construction we have going at this time.
But there is no state plan as you promised when you
no,
came in.
We're encouraging that.
In office.
We're encouraging that, and we're setting the lead by having the state set an example. And the biggest thing now is to get jobs for anyone. And the only way we're going to do that is to get building going again in New York State. That's why when we borrowed the other day to get money to increase our ability to bond, we were borrowing money to get building going again. And we're going to get building going again for all people in the state, and that will include minority hiring. You can be sure of that.
Gentlemen, we are out of time for this edition of Newsmakers. I want to thank our guest, the Governor of New York State, Hugh Carey, for joining us. Thank you for being with us today, Governor, and thanks, too, to my colleagues, Tom Poster of the New York Daily News and Ronald Smuthers of the New York Times. I'm Dave Marish for Channel 2 News. Have a good Sunday.